So it looks like Scarlet Witch, or at least some variant of her, is going to be kicking some serious butt in Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness. So in honor of that, I figured now would be a great time to look back at some of the moments throughout her career as a superpowered individual where she whooped the tar out of some of the most powerful heroes in the Marvel Universe. So without any further ado, let's go ahead and dive right into it. Let's start this video off with an example of a time when Scarlet Witch easily defeated the most number of heroes all at once, but in a fairly non-traditional way. Since by this point I'm just about legally required to talk about House of M pretty much any time the opportunity presents itself. Oh, I guess spoiler alert for this entry, I'm talking about House of M. In this comic storyline, which saw Wanda Maximoff reshaping reality in order to try to make it so that everyone got what they wanted, things very quickly devolved into chaos as Wolverine and a handful of heroes were able to recall how the world was before, and subsequently set out to return things to how they should be. After Magneto himself found out about this false reality, he turned his wrath on Quicksilver, who had actually pushed for Wanda to make the changes that she did. This infuriated Wanda, who lashed out at her father, blaming him and all mutant kind for her suffering, uttering the iconic line, "No more mutants." With those simple words, she reverted the world back to the way that it was, but also stripped nearly the entire mutant race of their powers. Now, does that count as her beating all of them? Kind of, I guess. It's close enough that I'm gonna count it at least. During the Avengers and X-Men Axis story arc, a lot of stuff was royally screwed up. I mean, Red Skull had all of mutant kind locked away in concentration camps, and Magneto and Quicksilver were working alongside Dr. Doom. That's some pretty dark stuff. Feeling like she should do something, Wanda sets out to take out Dr. Doom. In a permanent fashion, if you get my drift. Knowing that she would never be able to forgive herself if she succeeded, Quicksilver and Magneto quickly confronted her. As you would expect based off of the topic of this video, that didn't go too well for them. She broke Quicksilver's neck. Then when Magneto tried to get her to stop by pointing out the horrific act that she just committed, killing her own brother, she simply blamed her father for turning him against her. Then she took him out with the full force of her chaos magic. Yeah, it's probably never a good idea to anger Wanda Maximoff. Doesn't really end all that well for you most of the time. Of course, Wanda doesn't just kick the snot out of other mutants. Of course not. She's got an entire other superpowered family to lay the smackdown on. In Avengers Disassembled, the Wasp got on Wanda's bad side by making a small comment about Scarlet Witch being a failed mother as her children were kidnapped and absorbed by Mephisto. Royally peeved, as you would expect, Wanda went on a bit of a bender, unable to control her magic, until Dr. Doom agreed to help her, so long as she became the host for the Life Force entity. This entity in turn made Wanda ultra powerful, so much so that she was able to reanimate the Jack of Hearts, turning him into a living bomb that she sent into the Avengers mansion, killing Ant-Man in the process. Then she caused She-Hulk to go into a frenzy, ending with her ripping Vision in half and putting several other Avengers in the hospital with some rather serious injuries. In the end, Earth's mightiest heroes weren't able to stand against the Queen of Chaos, and basically fell apart. Wasn't really a good day to be a hero. Avengers vs. X-Men gave us some of the most overpowered characters we have ever seen on the page, when the Phoenix Force was split amongst 5 different members of the X-Men. However, no matter how powerful of a foe, Scarlet Witch can more than likely find a way to take them down, as was the case when she faced down Magik. In their first encounter, things didn't go Wanda's way. While she was able to hold her off for a little bit by putting up a magic barrier, she was distracted by Vision, who had been injured, and thus Magik got the better of her. Later on though, Wanda and Magik faced off once again, and this time things went much better for Wanda. Not as clean of a win as some of the other entries on this list, but heck, when you're going up against Magik, a character who in some versions of the Marvel future becomes the Sorceress Supreme, you gotta take what you can get, and either way, it's fairly impressive in my opinion. But Magik wasn't the only host for the Phoenix Force that Wanda has taken on. She's also fought against Jean Grey on a few occasions. Though to be fair, none of those battles actually took place while Jean Grey was infused with power by that cosmic entity. You know what, close enough. Obviously, the two mutants fought against each other while Wanda was a member of Magneto's Brotherhood of Evil Mutants, including one time where she placed a hex on Grey that caused her to be unable to use her powers temporarily, which could have been far more devastating if the Brotherhood weren't attempting to flee at the time. Then, in Forever X-Men, Wanda unleashed the full force of her powers. This overwhelmed Grey, causing her to be taken out of the fight entirely. This is one of many different examples of times where Scarlet Witch just lets loose, showing that if she is unleashing the full amount of her power, she can be a really terrifying opponent to face down. Storm is easily one of my favorite members of the X-Men. Her powers are completely awesome, and her leadership capabilities have made her the best team leader the X-Men ever had. Sorry, Cyclops, but come on, even you know it's true. Of course, no matter how badass she can be, even she is vulnerable to being beaten down by Wanda Maximoff. During the With an Iron Fist storyline within the Exiles comic, Storm and company found themselves face to face with an enraged Scarlet Witch, who had been simply trying to relax with a nice, easy swim when they showed up. Wondering what Storm was doing there, given that this Earth's version was dead at the time, she lashed out with a massive blast of magic from her hands and eyes, knocking Storm out of the sky and out of the fight entirely. Didn't even really look like it took her that much effort to do it either. It was a two-hit fight. Wanda hit Storm, Storm hit the ground. Rough stuff. From the goddess of storms to the god of thunder himself, Thor is arguably one of the most powerful members of the entire Avengers roster. So Wanda being able to take him on should really illustrate just how powerful she can be. Though some of you might argue that this fight shouldn't really count, as during Uncanny Avengers number 4, Thor was possessed by the Red Skull. And it was while he was under the control of Red Skull that he came into conflict with the Scarlet Witch. The battle was quite intense regardless, with Thor flinging lightning bolts at her, while she in turn sent semi-trucks flying back at him. Ultimately, the fight came to an end when Wanda channeled her chaos magic into the ground and sent Thor flying up into the air. Upon impact, Red Skull's hold over Thor was loosened just enough that the Asgardian god was able to regain control of himself. So even though he was possessed, and presumably not fighting at 100%, I'm still gonna count this as a win for Wanda, because it's not every day that you go up against a mythological Norse god, let alone come out on top. Well, okay, maybe it is kinda normal for people who live in the Marvel Universe, but you get what I mean. Speaking of ranking members of the Avengers, let's talk about the time that Wanda stripped Tony Stark of his famous armor. And not in the way that Tony would probably enjoy. During What If, Avengers Disassembled, an alternate take on the events of Avengers Disassembled, the team went after Scarlet Witch and Captain America, hoping to stop them from harming anyone else. During the ensuing fight, Wanda used her chaos magic to tear apart Iron Man's armor, then dangled the team in the sky, holding them in place while Cap tried to explain the situation to them. It kinda makes you wonder if Tony has ever developed a suit of armor specifically for dealing with chaos magic. Yeah, he probably has. I figure I should probably include at least one from the Marvel Cinematic Universe here, though there are not a ton of examples, at least as of the recording of this video, that was before the release of Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness, which might just give us a few based on the trailers and teasers and such. So right now, all we really got is this moment in Civil War when Wanda took down Vision. Even though it didn't really involve any kind of fight between the two characters, with Vision being preoccupied with Hawkeye at the time. Though it did show us something that gave us some hints at what came later on in the franchise, when Wanda used her magic to effectively shut down the Mind Stone in Vision's forehead, hinting at the climactic moment in Infinity War where she destroyed the Mind Stone in an attempt to stop Thanos. Seeing Wanda choose her own life and stand up for what she believed in Civil War, even against someone she cared for deeply, was a very powerful moment, showing that Wanda's strength doesn't just come from her chaos magic, though it does certainly help. Remember how earlier on in this video I talked about a time when Wanda took on a Phoenix Force infused member of the X-Men? Well, that wasn't actually the only member of that group that she took out. Namor the Submariner was also a member of the Phoenix Five, serving as a host for the cosmic entity during Avengers vs. X-Men. As part of his rampage trying to get the world to fall under the team's control, Namor traveled to Wakanda and began taking out innocent civilians left and right. The Avengers quickly sprung into action, attempting to keep casualties at a minimum. However, Namor was quickly able to overpower them all, until Scarlet Witch entered the fray. Utilizing nearly all of the magic available to her, Wanda summoned a massive barrier that not only shielded her from Namor's Phoenix Fire, but also deflected it back at him, causing him to fall back to Earth, broken and defeated. So that's 2 members of the Phoenix Five that she took down. If you don't already think that Wanda is one of the most powerful members of Marvel's stable of heroes, I don't really know what else I can say to convince you. Because that is some pretty definitive evidence, if you ask me. What happens when you combine Scarlet Witch with the musings of a mad scientist and sprinkle in some ancient evil? You get her borderline embarrassing Captain America and She-Hulk. During the Avengers West Coast storyline, the ancient evil Cap and She-Hulk were out looking for Wanda, who had left the team due to an emotional breakdown. Their search led them to a facility where they did indeed find Wanda, but they were too late, as the Scarlet Witch had already been fully integrated with that which endures, which had twisted her mind into believing in mutant superiority. The two leapt into action, attempting to subdue her, only to get knocked out and captured after she dropped a wall on their heads. Are you starting to notice a pattern with Wanda? She has some kind of breakdown, then someone or something takes advantage of that and manipulates her, turning her kinda evil. It's a tale as old as time. Earlier on in this video, I talked about a moment where Quicksilver got taken out by Wanda pretty easily when he was fighting alongside his father against her. Now let's talk about another time where she kicked his butt, but this time he was on his own. Slight difference there. Remember that other entry where I talked about Wanda beating Jean Grey? Well, after she did that, Pietro entered the fight, chasing his sister who had made his way into the palace belonging to a clone of Storm. It was a whole thing that we don't really have to get into here. All you have to know is that comics are weird. Like, really weird. As he entered, he saw an injured Wanda sitting in the middle of the floor. Moving in closer to check on his sister, instead he found that it was all a ruse, and Rogue managed to come up behind him and knock him out. Speaking of another time when technically someone else landed the final blow, let's talk about Hawkeye. Hawkeye and Wanda in the MCU might be all buddy-buddy, but on the page, their relationship has had some not-so-great moments. Like during the events of Avengers Disassemble, where Wanda warped reality, summoning forth a Kree warship, upon which Hawkeye was killed when it exploded. So does she get credit for that? He certainly blames her for it when he's resurrected in House of M. That didn't end too well for him either, as she wound up erasing him from reality via one of her conjured children. Now, both times she technically didn't take him down, but she was directly responsible for the circumstances of both, so I'm gonna give her the win here. If you disagree, let me know down in the comments. We'll have a nice little chat about it. Keep it civil now. You know how they say that the toughest enemy we face throughout our lives is ourselves? Well, people who say that probably don't mean it literally. But during the events of Fantastic Four number 645, Wanda came face to face with herself, like an actual flesh and blood version of herself. Wanda, though, was surprisingly unfazed by this. She simply pointed out to her doppelganger that because there are 2 Scarlet Witches in one reality, neither one is at full power, due to a fracturing of chaos magic or whatever. She then lashed out at her doppelganger, knocking her out with a massive magical blast. So even when not fully powered, she still managed to royally kick her own ass. Congratulations, I guess? As if fighting herself wasn't weird enough, let's talk about the time that she fought a zombified Howard the Duck. During Marvel Zombies and the Army of Darkness, Ash Williams from the Evil Dead films found himself face to face with the undead waterfowl while trying to save Dazzler from his clutches. He initially believed that he had succeeded in taking Howard out, after bisecting him with his chainsaw. However, the zombies in the Marvel Zombies universe are a bit more durable than the deadites that he normally fights, so the Duck wasn't totally out of commission. Just in the nick of time, in walked Scarlet Witch, who finished Howard off by turning him into glass, which I'd have to imagine would kill just about anything, zombie or otherwise. The entirety of the zombie comic series has got to be about the weirdest that Marvel has ever gotten. Then again, the 90s were a thing, and comics as a whole were all very, very weird during that period of time, so maybe not? Maybe when compared to that, Marvel Zombies is actually pretty tame. Hey there everybody, I'm John Alditz. I made this video and I want to know what you think. What heroes do you think Wanda could beat if given the chance? Be sure to let me know your thoughts down in the comments below, or go ahead and shoot me a response over on Twitter. I'd love to hear from you. Thanks for watching, and be sure to subscribe to CBR for more great videos just like this in the future.